Today's top stories at NBR: American fintech Square to buy Australian buy now pay later provider. Court of Appeal dismisses Winston Peters' appeal over the leaking of his superannuation overpayment. Evolve Education's head leaving, and there's more coming right up. Kia ora and welcome to NBR Today, a wrap of the day's top business stories from the authority in New Zealand business news since 1970, nbr.co.nz. It's Monday, the 2nd of August. I'm Paul Brennan. Thanks so much for joining us. Tilt Renewables has signed a 20-year power purchase agreement with Genesis Energy over a new 75-megawatt wind farm in Northland, marking the Trans-Tasman renewable developer's last play as a listed company. Tilt and listed generator retailer Genesis today announced the conditional electricity offtake agreement would underpin construction of their second joint project, the Kawaikawai wind farm near Dargaville. It follows the start of operations in March of Tilt's Waipipi wind farm in South Taranaki, whose generation Genesis had similarly agreed to buy over 2 decades. American fintech Square is to buy Australian buy now pay later provider AFTERPAY in a New Zealand $41.5 billion deal. The San Francisco-based financial services and digital payments firm will acquire ASX-listed AFTERPAY shares, accelerating AFTERPAY's growth in the key US market and expanding access to consumers for both companies. It will be the largest merger and acquisition deal in Australian history, the Australian Financial Review reported. The transaction will be paid for in Square stock and is expected to be concluded in the first quarter of 2022. Former Deputy Prime Minister Winston Peters must pay another round of legal costs after the Court of Appeal dismissed his appeal over the leaking of his superannuation overpayment. New Zealand First's leader in July 2020 was ordered by the High Court to pay $320,000 in costs after failing to prove a raft of National Party cabinet ministers and senior public servants were the source of leaks to media over his overpaid pension weeks out from the 2017 general election. Former National MPs Paula Bennett and Ann Tolley, State Services Commissioner Peter Hughes, the Ministry of Social Development and its former CEO Brendan Boyle were alleged to have breached a duty to keep details of Peter's superannuation application and the $18,000 overpayment private. The plaintiff had sought $1.8 million in damages and declarations of wrongdoing, but Auckland's Justice Geoffrey Venning denied him relief on the basis he couldn't prove who leaked the information. Kāinga Ora's chief executive used information received from the market when wrongly informing a parliamentary select committee of the details surrounding the housing agency on a failed Auckland property deal. At Parliament's Social Services and Community Select Committee on June 9th, National Housing spokesperson Nicola Willis claimed Kāinga Ora was waving around the taxpayer's chequebook and making an offer $10 million above those made by other developers on a property at 686 Swanson Road, Auckland. Kāinga Ora Chief Executive Andrew Mackenzie told the committee the agency's bid was just $2 million higher than the bid that eventually won and that it withdrew from the process due to issues with the land's water infrastructure. Documents released to NBR through the Official Information Act said the Crown Agency entered into a $38.5 million agreement, inclusive of GST, to purchase the 4-hectare property across several lots before terminating the agreement on April 29th. Evolve Education's New Zealand head Craig Pressland is leaving the early childhood education company after 3.5 months in the role. Pressland, who headed up 2 other private ECE businesses in the 2000s, took up the role of Chief Operating Officer for New Zealand, where Evolve runs 116 centres, in mid-April. His appointment followed the retirement of Tim Wong as New Zealand Chief Executive, also announced late March. The dual-listed company said this was to enable Wong to return to his family in Australia. Official papers reveal the government was prepared to lose up to $50 million as part of a screen sector indemnity scheme it introduced last December. The scheme came into effect amidst fears 12 New Zealand productions would not be able to collectively access $72.2 million of private finance without the government cover. A Treasury paper dated last December and obtained by NBR under the Official Information Act provides more detail on the scheme than previously made public. It said the scheme's intention was to keep the domestic film industry going during the COVID-19 pandemic because commercial insurers had stopped providing pandemic cover. The full details of those stories and more are at nbr.co.nz right now. Tomorrow at NBR, John McDermott's economics column looks at the economic consequences of COVID. And in Margin Call, Ashley Gardine discusses how to get an edge when investing. I'm Paul Brennan. I look forward to being with you again tomorrow from around lunchtime for the morning's NBR trending stories. Then same time, same place, right here from 5:30 tomorrow for another NBR Today.